Man comes up with bold way of stopping people cutting through yard. From his hiding spot he sat in anticipation. His plans had been set in motion and all he had to do now was wait. He had already attempted to compromise with those around him, but when negotiations fail, a person has to escalate. The next unlucky person to use his lawn as a shortcut was going to regret it. Thomas Lyons had achieved that which so many can only dream of. He had purchased his first home, a beautiful 3-bedroom home. It gave his family the space that they deserved, there was room enough for his children to play as they should, and it allowed for his wife to pursue her hobby of gardening. But, for Thomas, the sparkling crown jewel of his new home was its vibrant front lawn. If only he knew what trouble would be coming his way. It wasn't long before Thomas's troubles began. He noticed that far too many people felt they had the right to cut across his yard. He could have come to terms with it if it wasn't happening so often, but unfortunately for Thomas, things couldn't be that easy for him. The sheer amount of people that had made his lawn their personal shortcut seemed like too many to be true. He had to be sure of what his eyes were seeing, so he decided to put up a camera. In one day he recorded 30 pedestrians, 8 bikers, and 2 strollers. What made their choice of route so unreasonable was the fact that there was a sidewalk bordering all public sides of his property. They did not have to treat his home this way. The corner of the yard closest to the sidewalks had become completely bare of any grass due to the high volume of corner cutters. Seeing the damage done, Thomas tried the diplomatic route, requesting that passing walkers limit themselves to the sidewalk. His polite request was answered by people who were only willing to ignore him. Thomas's yard continued to bear the weight of their inconsiderate actions. Helpful acquaintances asked Thomas why he hadn't just put up a fence to solve his problem. What they didn't know was that it wasn't that easy. Erecting a fence around his yard would cost Thomas in time, paperwork, labor, and money. It was too expensive. With fencing off the table as a solution, Thomas had to think of another way to convince people not to cut across the yard. His time spent thinking was not made any easier by the fact that he had to watch people using his lawn as a sidewalk the entire time. He was astonished by how rude people had become. With enough time to ponder his problem, Thomas began to hatch his master plan. Operation Lawn Protection needed to satisfy both Thomas's needs and his lawn's needs. For the lawn, he only needed a sensor. For himself, he needed something much simpler. Thomas's only need was to rub it in the faces of those that kept ignoring him. He set up a camera to record the incoming show. Seated on his own front row seats, Thomas was ready to bask in the glory of his genius. Bright and early, the first corner cutter arrived. A jogger had come to trespass just as so many others had before her. It was time for Thomas to bear the fruits of his labor. Predictably, the jogger moved off the sidewalk and onto the lawn. This time, Thomas didn't have to watch in anger. The jogger stepped into the sensor's range, oblivious to what was coming. Anyone around would have only heard their yells of surprise. As the jogger crossed into the sensor's view, a blaring alarm began to ring. That would have been uncomfortable enough, without the sprinklers coming to life. The sprinklers had been set to their strongest setting, overwhelming and soaking trespassers instantly. The jogger may have been the first to get a cold shower in the yard, but they wouldn't be the last. The next group to cut across were a group of middle school girls. A brief screech of noise and a spray of freezing water was enough to send them running and screaming. Things couldn't be working out any better for Thomas, or could they? The final, delicious, step to Thomas's plan was all thanks to his camera. Thomas recorded every surprised shriek and subsequent soak his solution provided and posted them to his TikTok account for all the world to see. However, this victory wasn't as sweet as it could have been. His post had attracted some criticism from those that saw it, and Thomas was not going to stand for it. Many people praised him for his trap. They were trespassing after all. But the scolding comments left him mind-boggled. "It's just grass," someone said. "It's just water," another shot back. "It's just a couple of people walking. Take a chill pill," another wrote. The next response was clearly someone who had been through a similar situation. "It's not one person, it's many, every day, and it costs money to fix a lawn, especially if you live in an area that makes you have a certain look to your yard and home. When someone is racing to the bus, every second counts. My job is more important than your stupid lawn." Thomas turned red in the face, but the netizens came to his defense. "Then leave 5 minutes earlier. There's no excuse. Would you let someone run across your backyard when they're literally a full sidewalk only 5 feet away? No. Stop being such an idiot. Just then, Thomas heard another shriek. This one came from someone on a motorbike. Seriously, a motorbike. There was one comment, however, that seemed to shut up the naysayers. When someone gets hurt on your property, they can sue you. Plain and simple. He has every right to keep people off his land. Thomas had not only come up with the perfect solution, but the clips were getting hundreds of thousands of views. Over the weeks, the traffic slowly dissipated. He put up some stakes with twine to try and make another barrier. But once in a while, some moron would come by and get a cold wake-up call. Thomas would keep filming and uploading these videos. He was just too hilarious to keep to himself.